do our best here. So real quick, just to give you a little bit of background on why we have permits. The U.S. Environmental Agency regulates the Clean Water Act. Section 402 of the Clean Water Act regulates the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which is discharges to the waters of the United States. So originally this was considered phase 1 for large communities and large construction projects, industrial activities, that sort of thing. Then in December of 1999, the EPA finalized Title 40 of their Code of Federal Regulations, which also started regulating smaller municipalities, commonly called the Phase 2 communities, which is where Boone County falls. And then EPA gave the Department of Natural Resources delegating authority to implement the NPDES program. So Boone County is permitted through the Missouri Department of Natural Resources Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, or MS4 program, which basically means that we're a public entity that has, connected roads and ditches that discharge to waters of the United States. As part of our MS4 program, we are tasked with developing and enforcing local ordinances, and we are required to partially ensure compliance with Missouri Department of Natural Resource NPDES requirements. So making sure that construction activities have the proper permits that they need and that they're in compliance with those permits. Common pollutants that we usually see from residential construction sites would be sediment from track out, solid waste and construction debris, sanitary waste, oil and grease, and concrete truck washout. Regulators are tasked with doing inspections. So construction sites can be inspected by the EPA, the Department of Natural Resources, or Boone County. State and county permits require operators to allow regulators to inspect the site. That's in the permits and in our ordinances. Most of the inspections that the county does are complaint driven. And fine and penalties can escalate. So, as you go up the chain, the penalties get more severe. And EPA can refer the worst cases to the Department of Justice. So, Boone County is required to conduct inspections for construction activities laid out in our stormwater management plan. So we can perform inspections and we can enforce any findings that we need to. We can receive and respond to complaints from the Department of Natural Resources and citizens. The county can issue notice of violations and stop work orders, and we can refer a site to the Department of Natural Resources or the EPA if we can't get them to come into compliance. So when as a contractor do you need a Boone County land disturbance permit? You need a permit if you're going to be developing land that disturbs 1 acre or more. So this could be for single family residential, this could be your home footprint, any accessory structure footprints, driveways, wastewater systems, ponds that you want to put in for recreational use. All of that would be considered. Land development in or near an environmentally sensitive area that disturbs more than 3,000 square feet, or land development activities that are less than 1 acre that are part of a common plan of development that is at least 1 acre in size. What the county needs you to submit with your land disturbance permit application is the application and the fee. We need a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And yeah, for single family residential construction, we have one here in the office that's done. It's in the red folder is what we call it. And so we've pretty well done that for you. And then you just kind of customize that template, or you can get the template off of our website at showmeboone.com. We need an erosion and sediment control plan. We need proof of your state operating permit. And if you're going to have any stream crossings, then you will need to have a limited stream assessment that's done by a civil engineer and a stormwater discharge permit as well. And I'm just throwing that one in there because we've had several problems lately with people coming back and going, oh, well, we have the crossing and it's failing, but we didn't know that it had to be engineered. So it's the only reason I bring that up right now. So what is a stormwater pollution prevention plan? The stormwater pollution prevention plan is a living document that basically tells you how you're going to start your project, how the construction process is going to proceed, and what you're going to do on your site. So as construction evolves, you're constantly editing the document to reflect what's going on site. So the SWIP needs to include a site description, what best management practices you're going to use. So, for single family residential, are you going to be using silt fence? Are you going to be using straw wattles? Are you using existing vegetation? Maintenance procedures for those best management practices. And then also your inspection schedules. So how often you're going to inspect, when you're inspecting after rain events. And then you need to keep those inspections with your SWIP so that when an inspector comes out, you can make that information available to them for review. Erosion and sediment control plans for single family residences can be a 2-foot contour topographical map. We like to see the direction of flow, any areas that need to be protected, proposed disturbed areas. So we will ask you when you come in to get your building permit and your land disturbance permit, we will ask you to show us where you're going to put the house, where you're going to put the driveway, where you're going to put the wastewater system. We want to see clearing limits, and we want to know where you're going to put your best management practices in. And then we also want to see, any good housekeeping best management practices you have. So if you're going to be stockpiling your soil, where are you going to do that? Where are you going to have your concrete washout station? Where's your construction entrance going to be? Those sorts of things. So I mentioned it earlier, but the permittee is also responsible for doing site inspections. So the state says that you need to do these at least once every 7 calendar days and with 48 hours after a 2-year, 24-hour rain event. And, we want you to be looking at disturbed areas that are not fully stabilized, any material storage areas that are not covered or have secondary containment. You should be looking at all of your best management practices to make sure that they're still functioning and don't need to be repaired. And you should be looking at your construction entrance and the road adjacent to that to see if you have any track out leaving the site. And DNR has another inspection sequence that they allow too, but it's not as common to see here in the county. But you can certainly do that too. You just need to detail how you're going to inspect your site in your SWIP. So what is a common plan of development? A common plan of development is a contiguous area where multiple separate and distinct construction activities may be taking place at different times on different schedules under one common plan. So if you are building in a common plan of development, this would be, you would need a state land disturbance permit if you're, as a contractor, are going to buy one or more lots for the purpose of building a home for sale. These lots do not have to be contiguous. You do not need a permit if it's an individual that's buying a lot for their personal residence and hiring you to build their home. And if 1 acre or more is going to be disturbed, whether it's by a contractor or an individual, then you will need a Boone County land disturbance permit as well. Before the county will issue you your building permit, we will need to have proof that you have your state operating permit. So proof needs to be, we need to see the state permit number, the permit holder name and address, the facility name and location, and the permit expiration date. So you don't necessarily have to submit the whole permit to us, but we at least need something official like the first page of the permit that has all of those things on it. Now, if you're a contractor who comes in to get the building permit for an individual who's hired you to build their home, and it's in a common plan of development, we don't need to see proof of your state permit because it's not required unless they're disturbing anything. And then finally, how do we final our land disturbance permits? So the first thing that we're going to do when you call for your final inspection is we're going to come out and we're going to make sure that there is no excessive erosion occurring, you know, that everything is done. We're going to want to see 70% density over 100% of the coverage area. So 70% growth of vegetation over 100% of your disturbed area. And we want to see that your temporary best management practices have been removed. So we don't want to see any silt fence or straw wattles or anything like that. In the areas where you remove your temporary silt fence or BMPs, whatever those may be, we want to see it seeded and stabilized. Now, if you're in a subdivision, all of the previous applies, except if you sell a lot to an individual before it reaches that coverage requirement, then the lot must be seeded and strawed and stabilized so that nothing is going to leave the site before we can final that permit. So that was really, I feel like, really quick and maybe a little confusing. So if anybody has questions where I can clarify anything, I would be happy to do so.
And you guys can feel free to write that in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself at this time if you'd like to ask Nicki any questions. All right. Well, you guys she'll be around, so if you guys have any questions that come up after Sarah's presentation, feel free to ask her at that time as well. And so next we will have Sarah Wright presenting on the state land disturbance and the common plan and development and MS4 as well. She is the state MS4 permitting for the and land disturbance permit coordinator. Oh, I think it may be. Oh, so the county, this is a question, I don't know. Maybe this might be directed towards you. So the county needs to see a state land disturbance permit if a builder buys one less acre on the lot in the subdivision. Do you want to answer that one, Nicki? No, it looks like she's typing. All right, we'll let you get started, Sarah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Nicki, first of all, for kind of setting up what we got going on here. So yes, my name is Sarah Wright. I know a couple of you from my MS4 side of the role. Today, I'm going to be giving you updates on the new land disturbance permit here with the state. But first, I'm going to go over common plan of development. This is a big deal statewide. It's very confusing. So get right into that. We do permit it, as Nicki set us up. She explained very well the phase 2 stormwater regulations that came in. And you can see here in our state statutes that even though your land disturbance site, parts of it might technically be smaller than an acre, if it falls into that common plan of development or sale, then you're going to need to get that permit through us with the state. So here in our definition section of our regulations is a really nice long definition of the common promotional plan that we talk about. And we're going to look at these a lot when we see, it can be as simple as a sign advertising a subdivision. Then we know that that is a common plan. This can be somebody puts in a request for zoning. Then we know that that is indeed a common plan of development. So that's often how our inspectors out there in the state figure out, like, oh, this one should have had some permits in there. So it's going to be, again, identified through these documentation that we see out there. And we often come across like the sign on your right there, these subdivisions that, some of them will nicely say it's McBride and, Sons. We go back into that subdivision and we find other developers in there. And when that happens, everybody in there needs to make sure that they are covered by these state permits, or, they could be automatically in violation by not having the proper permit. So sometimes it's easier to look at what is not under this common plan of development or sale. And so now these two examples, I am going to restate what it says there, that these are when it's under an acre. So if you have a larger common plan, but maybe it's something outside of that larger contiguous footprint, that discrete thing, if it's under an acre, will be exempt from this common plan and therefore won't need to get our state permit. Or once you have a lot, if you're a developer and you're working on a bunch of the lots, if it gets sold off and that private owner is going to do whatever to it, if it's a private owner, that won't need to have coverage under our state permit if it is under an acre. A couple other situations come up. I think Nicki touched on some of this too, where if something's sold off, so just because as a developer you might sell parts of it to another developer, if you're that second one coming along, you need to make sure you have that under permit coverage, like right as soon as that sale happens, or probably better to have it right beforehand. You need to keep that permit coverage once that land disturbance is active on our land. So keep that in mind. But again, this is where it goes to, if it's sold off to an individual, and it's not, part of this plan for sale anymore, that it's actually sold and it's their personal residence and it's under that acre threshold, then they do not need to get that state permit with us. So this is often easier to see in pictures. So on the rare cases, this is not a subdivision. Here's a nice little retail situation. And you can see the red circle here in the middle. We're just going to go, this is not to scale. And let's say that developer is doing just that restaurant. They're not doing any of these other big retail locations, and that one restaurant is less than an acre. Well, because they're still in that larger footprint, and that contiguous larger footprint, even though it's under an acre, they will still need to get coverage under our state permit. On this example here, you can see kind of the pink line that goes around everything. If this was a new subdivision being built, everything in that is our contiguous area. Everything under here is going to need to have permit coverage. So if that red section that's kind of J-hooked around, or the blue section that's kind of J-hooked around, let's say those are two separate developers, they will still each need to have permit coverage through the state for those two big chunks of land that they're working on. They're over an acre and they're part of that contiguous plan. So let's say another developer comes in. Now, these are obviously that top row. Those are all touching. We understand contiguous, but we see these other ones kind of floating down here. While they're not necessarily contiguous with each other, they're still in our larger common plan. So even though they're separated like that, they still need to have permit coverage. And in our e-permitting system, we allow you to put that under one permit. So you won't have to get like 4 individual ones through the state, but you'll still need to get a permit to cover that from us. So let's say these green shapes are all bought by private entities. Because they're private, they're not for sale anymore. The final buyer, they're building their own home on those, and they're under an acre. All these circles, we'll say, are under an acre. They will not need to have our state permit. They're owned by private people working on their own individual homes. They will be fine. This guy on the corner at the triangle lot, he's got a bigger lot. Let's say it's actually 1.25 acres. It's broken that acre threshold. That's our magic number. Now he's going to need that permit coverage, even though it is a private home owner building his own place. Okay, so down at the bottom, I popped in this guy. So down at the bottom, you see the blue square. So he's the same guy that owns this top J hook, but it's not in the same contiguous section anymore. Now it's totally separate. It's outside of that main subdivision. And let's say it's 0.75 acres. So it's not even a full acre. This does not need our state permit. It's outside of that main footprint and it's under an acre. So no permit needed for that guy down there. So one more kind of example of that would be if there's a developer, if one of you guys comes out and you build this big subdivision back here behind this, already developed subdivision. But while you're breaking ground, you go ahead and put this house up there in the circle, and that's under an acre. While this needs to be permitted by us because it's the big contiguous plan, because this one's under an acre and it's a separate building up there, you do not need to have that covered under your state permit. So there are some exceptions to the rule. When in doubt, you can always give us a call and we'll help talk you through it. So on to our fun part. The Missouri State Land Disturbance Permit is up for renewal. And so the first draft has been completed and it just now started our industry review. So in the draft right now, again, it's just a draft, it's not final. We are trying to call out very specifically when you need this common promotional plan threshold. So we've made a new little table. I have it up towards the very beginning of the permit, so I'm hoping this adds some clarity to help you all out to know when you don't need to get a permit for those types of situations. But speaking of the renewal, this is pretty big because it only happens once every 5 years. The MORA, our state land disturbance permit, it is what we call a general permit, which means that you cannot renew each individual one as a land disturbance permit. So if you're working on a subdivision right now, you can't say, I need this individual permit renewed. Unfortunately, all of these permits are going to expire on the exact same day, and that is regardless of when you get them. Every single one expires on February 7th of 2022. You can get it on February 6th of 2022, and it is still going to expire on February 7th of 2022. This is very important. Please do not get permits. If you can hold off, like come, the new year or whatever, if you can try to hold off, you're going to save money. We don't want you guys to have to buy this permit twice because there will be no fees returned. You can get that permit on February 6th on accident, and unfortunately we cannot return that fee. So we're going to put warning signs out on the website, but we're trying to get in front of you all now to warn you that these permits are all going to expire on February 7th. So that's your first warning on this. Another thing is that the new one will not be available until February 8th. So please try to remember the 8th is when you need to start thinking about getting the new permit. So again, the individual ones do not renew. You are going to have to get a new permit. It's going to be a whole new permit number. We'll still start with MORA, but you have to go ahead and get that if your project is still active. We are already very aware that e-permitting is probably going to be a nightmare starting February 8th. So because of that, we've already been approved at the department, and every inspector across the state will know this. There's a 6-month grace period. You have 6 months to get that new permit in hand. Now, if an inspector comes out and you're like, oh, I'm still trying to get it, they're probably going to be like, you need to get it now. And they're going to try to, but that's to make sure our system doesn't crash. That's to make sure, you might be done in March. So go ahead and finish it. And then you don't have to pay for that renewal. We're not trying to, make this a money grab. We really are trying to get you guys to like not accidentally get one too soon. Or if you can finish your project in that 6 months, good for you. Thank you very much. And you don't have to get another permit. So very important date to keep in mind, especially if you're going to have, something that's going to be active during then. If you need to start on the project now, because I think tree clearing time's coming up, if you need to get going on that now, think about phasing. If you just have to get a small amount now and then maybe only, get coverage for a new one, a bigger part later, however it works for you guys, but just be aware this is going to happen. So speaking of the actual renewal draft that I created, it's been reformatted. We try to keep it in line with our template for all of our master general permits. So there is some reformatting. We try to give it a little more sense to it, a little more flow. It wasn't exactly the best formatting before, so we worked on that. I also added some concrete washout guidance. That's just been something that's kind of been neglected, and some inspectors have been kind of winging it, so we wanted to make that very clear what's expected for you guys and for inspectors to be looking at. We tried to reduce the amount of inspections down. If areas are stabilized, we're going to try to reduce this down to just monthly inspections for those areas. We added a lot of clarity to the SWIP development, and especially that you need to have that SWIP before you start the activity. I think before it was written that you needed to have your SWIP developed before you got the permit. And we understand that there's kind of a lag time. You might not necessarily have your SWIP finished, but you want that permit. So we don't want that to be some weird loophole for a violation. So hopefully that's clarified in this new draft. Added some explicit language for our dewatering of basins, and added a whole new section just for the clarity of how and when to terminate this permit. As Nicki talked about, which I thank you for mentioning, take those temporary BMPs out before you terminate, little things like that. So it's a little more clear on when you can terminate these permits. So we need your help. I am not a contractor. I am not a developer. You guys are. We need industry experts to make comments on these. There's no point in me drafting a permit if it's not actually going to work. Permits don't live on paper. So this is your chance to get a really good amount of comments in. It's not even to public notice yet. This is our industry review period. It's a very short period of time, but if we get these in now, I can get them into our permit, any kind of changes before I even send it to the EPA for their approval. And that's the ideal situation, is that we want to be on the same page before that kind of thing is sent off. So I will need these comments by September 6th. If you would like a copy to review, email that address you see up there, and then we can get a copy to you. If for some reason, if you're like me and you're leaving for vacation tonight and you're going to be gone and you need some more time, shoot me an email. If I know I'm waiting on 1 or 2 comments, like if I have to wait a couple more days, let me know that. If I know it, I can plan for it, and then we can get those comments, taken into consideration. Because I really do want to hear, the more people I hear from, I think the better permit this is going to be for all of us to deal with. So please email that and just say, I want a copy of the land disturbance permit. When I leave on vacation, I already got somebody else checking that email so that you guys can all get the copy that you need. So that's really all I have. I know I didn't have too much to talk about either there, but that's my direct email. Please contact me anytime. That's my direct phone number. Reach out to me all you need to. But that general email account is checked by more than one of us, so that when we're out, it's no problem. We can keep you covered and get you guys what you need to keep moving forward. So please email it. I will be checking it today to get copies out for any of you guys. And again, I have somebody else watching that while I'm gone. But that's it, guys. Short and sweet today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Does anybody, Christina, were you able to get a little bit of clarification on your question that you had? Or if anybody else has any questions while Nicki and Sarah are both here to answer them.
Michelle, I do have one thing to add to my presentation, it was brought to my attention, I missed an important part of finaling your lot in a common plan of development. So in the county, if you sell your home if you sell the home to an individual before your site meets that 70% density, not only does it have to be stabilized, we need to see proof of the transfer of ownership as well before we can close your permit on that particular lot.
Thank you.
So sorry about that.
And then, Sarah, there's a question about, will your presentation be available online? If you'd like to share it with me, I'm gonna post the video of this, and I could post both of your presentations on there as well. So if that's all right with you,
Yep.
Sarah?
Yep, I'll send it
Fantastic.
to you.
Thank you. And then, when you're building on behalf of a private owner, do they have to have a state permit? Do you guys want to answer that, or?
Yeah, I can answer it for the state. So if it's not for sale anymore and that private owner, has a contractor in and it's less than an acre, then no, you do not have to. I don't expect every private homeowner to actually build their own house. Speaking from myself, that would be a disaster. So yeah, they can absolutely have a professional builder work on it, and that's fine.
And that's the same in the county too. It's only when the builder is building a home for sale that they would need the permit.
Or larger than the 1 acre.
Right.
Great. Are there any other questions that we can help get answered, or if you guys have any further questions in the future too, if you're thinking about it later tonight, you're also welcome to email me at booncountymo.org or the stormwater at booncountymo.org as well, and I can help get your questions answered too.
So I did have a question for Sarah real quick. In your presentation, you mentioned when you were showing your diagrams, one of the lots was like 1 1/4 acre, but it was an individual. Do they have to get a permit because the lot is 1 1/4 acre, or because they're disturbing more than an acre?
It would be if they're disturbing. So yeah, I think in that example, I was assuming they were going to disturb the whole thing. But yeah, absolutely. If you buy like a 1 1/4 acre lot, but the house footprint, the actual disturbed area is less than an acre, then no permit.
Okay. Christina had a question in the chat. How do you handle if the original developer still having an open LD permit while these permits are being issued? So if the original developer sells the lot, then the original developer needs to amend his SWIP and his permit to remove that lot, and then the new contractor would need to purchase a state permit for that lot. Unless it's an individual buying the home or buying the lot. Does that make sense?
Do they need to officially amend the permit, or can they just notate it on their SWIP?
I'll say for the state, they just need to note it on the SWIP.
That's all the county needs to see.
All right. Any other follow-up questions? Well, I'd like to thank you all for attending our quick little session, just to help clarify anything about building in a common plan of development and the land disturbance requirements with that. Again, if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to email the stormwater at booncountymo.org. And again, this will be posted later. And I'd like to thank you guys all for attending, and thank you again for presenting, both Nicki and Sarah. So I'll give you guys a couple more seconds in case there's anything we missed, but all right, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the day. I believe I notated everyone who in attendance, so I'll be sending out your certificate of attend for being here for your training. If I missed anybody, please let me know. All right, Thank you all very much. Have a fantastic rest of your day.